When I asked my mother about the Hawaii trip I'd spent $22,000 on, she said it so casually it barely sounded real. "Oh, we already went last week." It was just for family. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Just for family. Those words burned colder than the buffalo snow outside my window. I had emptied my savings trying to hold this family together after my divorce. And somehow, I was the one cut out. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I poured myself a drink and stared at the frozen street below, the glass heavy in my hand. If they thought they could erase me that easily, they were about to learn what family really costs. After my marriage fell apart, I'd kept repeating that family would be my anchor, something steady when everything else collapsed. My home, my sense of direction, my faith in belonging. Going back was supposed to heal me. Instead, it made me smaller. I rented a one-bedroom apartment in Buffalo, the kind where the old radiators hissed all night like restless ghosts. My job in finance kept my hands busy, but never my heart. So I did what I knew best. I fixed problems with numbers. Whenever Mom mentioned money troubles, I sent funds before she finished explaining. When Dad's car broke down, I paid the repair shop directly. My sister Erin only called when she needed something. Rent, utilities, a laptop for her online classes. I never hesitated. I told myself that generosity was love. Over 2 years, the payments blurred into a quiet pattern. Bills, groceries, repairs, all the invisible giving that slowly bleeds you dry. I even told my therapist I couldn't afford sessions anymore. The truth? I just couldn't justify spending on myself when they always needed more. Eventually, I began tracking their expenses in a spreadsheet, neatly labeled, perfectly organized, as if order could disguise the emptiness beneath it. When I first brought up the idea of the Hawaii trip, Mom had sounded thrilled. "We all need a reset," she'd said. I imagined us on a beach, sunlight soft on our faces, laughter carried by the tide, the way it used to be before everything cracked apart. It felt like redemption, a second chance to rewrite the story of us. I spent nights comparing hotels, picking one with ocean views and breakfast included. I booked snorkeling tours, sunset dinners, airport transfers, every detail carefully planned. I told myself the cost didn't matter. I just wanted to see them happy again. Maybe then they'd look at me and see more than the daughter who couldn't keep her marriage together. The night I booked the flights, I sat at my desk staring at the glowing confirmation email. My reflection in the screen looked tired but hopeful. I didn't realize hope would be the most expensive part of the trip. The next morning, Mom texted a short, "Got it," I smiled back, unaware that it would be the last time she treated me like part of the family. Betrayal doesn't strike all at once. It builds quietly. One favor, one transfer, one ignored thank you at a time. The call came on a gray Saturday, one of those Buffalo mornings when the sky looked like wet concrete. I had coffee in hand, my to-do list open, finally feeling like I might be pulling my life back together. Then Mom's name flashed on my screen. I answered with a practiced smile. "Hey, Mom!" "How's the Hawaii planning going?" There was a pause. Too long to blame on bad reception. "Oh," she said finally, her tone flat, almost distracted. "We already went last week. Just family." For a heartbeat, I thought she was joking. My laugh cracked in my throat. "What do you mean, went?" "I booked those tickets. All 4. "Yes, you did," she replied, voice smooth and calm, like she was explaining something simple. "It was lovely, Louisa. We just needed some time together." "You've been so busy with work." I froze. In the distance, I could hear the ocean, wind, laughter, the cry of seagulls, through her phone. Then the line went dead. The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering across the counter. Coffee ran down the cabinets, pooling dark on the floor. I stood there, motionless, listening to the radiator hiss like it was laughing at me. Only for family. For the rest of the day, I kept trying to find another explanation. A misunderstanding, a surprise, anything that didn't mean what it sounded like. When I finally checked the booking emails, the truth hit like ice water. My name wasn't listed anywhere. Every cent had come from my account, but the itinerary carried only their names. The next few days passed in a haze. I showed up to work, smiled through meetings, approved budgets like nothing was wrong, while inside, something essential was unraveling. Every transfer I'd ever made to them replayed in my mind like an endless ledger of shame. Rent, Car repairs, tuition, groceries. Each payment a small attempt to buy my place in a family that had already pushed me out. One night, I pulled an old photo from a drawer. Thanksgiving, years ago. Before the divorce, Mom and Dad stood in the middle, Aaron beside them, their arms linked. I was off to the side, holding the camera remote, half cropped out of the frame. Back then, I hadn't noticed. Now, it looked like a warning I'd ignored. That night, I didn't cry. I sat in the dark with my phone turned face down and finally admitted something I should have known all along. Love that demands a receipt isn't love at all. It's a business exchange. And like every account, one day the balance hits zero. The next time their names flashed on my screen, I let it ring. Not yet, a month slipped by. Snow thawed into gray slush, and the city hung heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. I hadn't spoken to Mom, Dad, or Aaron since that call from Hawaii, though the silence between us felt louder than any conversation we'd ever had. Then, one evening while I was sorting reports at my kitchen table, my phone buzzed again. Aaron's name glowed across the screen. For a heartbeat, I considered ignoring it. But habit, or maybe curiosity, won. "Hey, Lou," she said, her tone sugar-sweet, the kind she used when she wanted something. "Listen, my rent's late again. The landlord's being a jerk. Can you send me $2,000? Just till next week." I stared at the figures glowing on my laptop. 2,000. The same hands that had paid for her vacation, her comfort, her silence. My voice came out low. "Only for family, remember? What?" she asked, the sweetness cracking. "You heard me." A pause, then a brittle laugh. "Don't be ridiculous, Louisa. You are family. You've always helped us. Not anymore." I ended the call before she could argue. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but something sharper and cleaner. Relief. Opening my banking app, I scrolled through the automatic payments I'd set up for them over the years. Rent transfers, insurance premiums, phone bills, even their Wi-Fi. My thumb hovered, then pressed cancel. One by one, confirmations appeared: canceled, canceled, canceled. Each click felt like a door sealing shut. When I finished, I called my financial advisor. "I want my accounts fully secured," I said. "New passwords, two-factor authentication, everything." She didn't ask why. Maybe she didn't need to. The next morning, I drove to the bank. I handed over my ID, signed the forms, and watched as my advisor slid them back across the desk. "You're taking back control," she said softly. I smiled. Finally, outside the wind stung my face, but it felt cleansing, like it was sweeping away the last of the old version of me. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. "Can you install new locks and a camera system?" By evening, a man named Mike arrived. Broad-shouldered, quiet, efficient, the kind of person who understood without needing context. He replaced the worn brass lock with a heavy deadbolt, mounted a camera above the frame, and showed me how to access the feed from my phone. When he left, I stood by the door, staring at the tiny red light blinking steadily back at me. For the first time in years, the apartment felt truly mine. I poured a glass of wine, settled onto the couch, and watched the empty street below. Somewhere out there, Aaron was stewing, Mom was scheming, and Dad was pretending not to notice. They'd reach out again. I knew it. It didn't take long. 2 days later, the doorbell blared. 3 sharp presses slicing through the quiet. I froze, eyes locked on the small screen streaming the live camera feed. There they were. Mom, wrapped in her fur coat, arms crossed like she was ready to scold the world. Dad beside her, shoulders sagging, eyes darting anywhere but the lens. Aaron stood in front, lips glossed, phone in hand, trying to look unbothered. And beside her, a man in a gray suit clutching a briefcase. I didn't need him to speak to recognize who he was. One look at the gray suit and the practiced stiffness told me everything. I took a slow breath, walked to the door, and opened it just enough for them to see my face. "Louisa," my mother greeted, her voice carrying that brittle calm she used when she was seconds from losing her temper. "We need to talk." "I'm listening," I said, my tone flat. The man in the suit stepped forward. Briefcase in hand. "Ms. Mercer, I represent your parents and sister. They're concerned about some recent financial choices you've made. They've asked me to mediate before things escalate." "Escalate?" I echoed, leaning against the doorframe. You mean before you try to drag me into court for cutting off your spending account? His jaw tightened. They're worried your actions have become erratic, possibly unstable. Aaron gave a dramatic sigh behind him. We just want to help, Lou. You've been through a lot. My laugh came out dry and sharp. Help? You mean like that vacation you took with my money? The one you didn't even invite me to? You don't want to help. You want control? Watch your tone, my mother snapped, her composure cracking. We're family. Right, I said evenly. Only for family, wasn't that the line? Her face twitched, but she said nothing. Then my father spoke, his voice low and weary. Louisa, be reasonable. You know they rely on you. I looked at him, the man who'd once taught me to balance a checkbook, who used to say self-reliance was everything. They're grown. Dad, they can rely on themselves. The lawyer cleared his throat, adopting that rehearsed neutrality lawyers love. If you refuse to provide support, we'll have to pursue legal guardianship to protect both your assets and theirs. It's not uncommon in circumstances like this. The word guardianship hit like a slap of cold air. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They wanted ownership. I straightened, meeting his eyes. Then I'll see you in court. And I shut the door in their faces. For a long time I stood there, heart hammering, listening to their muffled voices bleeding through the wood. I let them rant, threaten, and finally leave. When silence returned, I poured myself another glass of wine, sat by the window, and let the hum of the city fill the void they'd left behind. A week later, the letter came, cream envelope, county seal. My name printed neatly across the front. Inside, the words felt almost surreal. Petition for guardianship filed by Marianne George and Aaron Mercer. Reason: concerns regarding Louisa. Mercer's emotional stability and financial judgment. It was outrageous, cruel, exactly what they'd do. I called my friend Janet the moment I finished reading. She didn't sound surprised. They're trying to break you, Lou, she said quietly. You'll need a lawyer. She gave me a name, Daniel Price. He helped me when my brother tried to sue me for inheritance money, she added. He doesn't scare easy. The next morning, I met Daniel in his downtown office, a calm man in his 50s, eyes steady, voice even. After I explained everything, he leaned back and steepled his fingers. What they're doing is psychological coercion, plain and simple, he said. But we'll need to prove your competence in every measurable way. Fine, I told him. Tell me where to start. He made a list. Employment records, medical evaluations, therapy notes, bank statements. If they want to paint you as unstable, he said, we'll show them you're the definition of stable. For the first time in months, I felt grounded. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. 2 weeks later, I walked through the courthouse doors. The marble floors echoed under my heels as I crossed the lobby, clutching the folder Daniel had prepared. My hands trembled, but my chin stayed high. Across the room, my parents and Aaron sat together at the opposite table. Aaron wore a black blazer, too polished, too practiced. Mom's eyes met mine, cold, defiant. Dad looked smaller than I remembered. Their lawyer, the same man from my doorstep, stood first to speak. Your Honor, he began. Ms. Mercer has displayed concerning behavior, erratic spending, emotional instability, and social withdrawal following her divorce. Her family believes she is unfit to manage her own affairs. It was almost laughable. They'd built a fantasy version of me, a woman unraveling. Daniel rose calmly beside me. Your Honor, he said, his voice steady. What you'll see today isn't instability, it's independence. My client has worked in finance for over 10 years, maintains consistent employment, carries zero debt, and has no record of impulsive behavior. Her only so-called fault is refusing to be exploited. He handed over the thick binder we'd prepared. Pay stubs, evaluations, transaction records detailing every transfer I'd ever made to them. Mom turned her head away. Aaron rolled her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't feel small at all. When the judge summoned me to the stand, my pulse pounded in my ears. I swore the oath, took my seat, and met his gaze head-on. Ms. Mercer, he began, his tone even. In your own words, why did you stop supporting your family financially? I drew in a steadying breath. Because I realized I wasn't their daughter anymore, I said quietly. I was their personal bank. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. For years, I paid their rent, their utilities, their groceries. I even funded a family trip to Hawaii, thinking maybe it would bring us closer. I paused. When I asked about it afterward, my mother said, "We already went, only for family." The judge's brow lifted. "And you weren't invited?" "No, Your Honor," I replied. "They didn't even tell me they'd gone." Daniel, my attorney, stepped forward smoothly. "And after that, Ms. Mercer stopped sending money. A month later, they called asking for rent again. Her reply was, and I quote, 'Only for family, remember?'" Gasps and whispers fluttered from the benches behind me. My mother's face turned crimson. Erin clenched her jaw. My father stared down at the table, pretending to review papers. The judge leaned back, his expression unreadable. Daniel handed him the final evaluation from my psychiatrist confirming my emotional and mental stability. "Your Honor," he said evenly, "the only instability present is this family's financial dependence on my client." Their lawyer tried to object, but the protest came out thin and desperate. After a pause, the judge delivered his verdict. The court finds no evidence of incapacity. Petition denied. Case dismissed. Just like that, it was over. I didn't smile. Not yet. I just exhaled, the sound trembling as it left me. My mother rose slowly, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Erin's eyes glistened, though whether it was from anger or humiliation, I couldn't tell. My father didn't look up at all. As they gathered their things, I turned toward them one last time. "You wanted control," I said softly. "Now you have none." Then I walked out. Outside, the cold air hit my skin like a baptism. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying anyone's weight but my own. The courthouse steps shimmered from melted snow, and as I descended, I thought of those 3 words that started it all. Only for family. It used to hurt. Now it made me smile. Because I finally understood. Sometimes the only way to keep your peace is to close the door, lock it, and let them knock from the outside. 3 months after the trial, Buffalo finally began to thaw. Snow melted into thin streams along the sidewalks. For the first time in years, the city didn't feel like a cage. I moved into a small apartment, cozy, bright, with wide windows that let in sheets of golden light every afternoon. The quiet there wasn't heavy anymore. It was gentle, earned. Mornings were for slow coffee, not frantic texts asking for money. Evenings were filled with small joys, reading, long walks, and a beginner's cooking class at the community center. The first time I made pasta from scratch, the dough tore apart in my hands, and I laughed anyway. It wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about beginning again. One weekend, Janet and a few friends from my book club came over with a bottle of wine and more warmth than I'd felt in years. As we toasted, Martha grinned. "You look lighter." "Lou, I feel lighter," I admitted. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet again, I opened my journal and wrote one line. "Freedom isn't revenge. It's reclaiming what they took from you." Through a mutual friend, I heard Erin was working double shifts to stay afloat, and my parents had moved to a smaller house. I didn't feel smug, just settled. They were finally living their own lives. I stood by my window, watching the city lights flicker across the dusk, and whispered to myself, "Only for family." This time, the words didn't sting. They soothed. That night, as the glow of Buffalo stretched beneath me, I realized what losing everything had really given me: clarity. For years, I'd confused sacrifice with love, silence with peace. But the truth was simpler. Family isn't measured by blood. It's measured by respect. They once said, "Only for family." I learned that real family never asks you to empty your wallet to prove your worth, so I kept what was mine, my boundaries, my freedom, my name. And if you've ever had to walk away from those who claim to love you, tell your story. Because sometimes letting go isn't cruelty. It's survival.